Hi, and welcome to my channel. Okay, so I wanted to talk about, in spirituality, there is an organicness to it. There is an ebb and a flow that's just natural. It's very different from religion. And I don't like religion is just as much as I don't like wealth, because it's corrupt. And that is my opinion. I feel like if you're going to be spiritual, and most of us come from religious backgrounds that transition into spirituality. There are those of us that actually were born into it, and oh, bless you for not knowing anything else but spirituality. But a lot of us awakened to this. So for those of us that awakened to this process, you came from somewhere, correct? And if you came from a religion and you feel some type of way about when people speak on their opinions about it, and it makes you it triggers you, it gives you some kind of emotional trigger, then you have not fully awakened to spirituality. You have not fully let go of your religious isms, and you haven't let go of that part of you in order to be able to fully ascend, to really open up to the teachings and the learnings and the understanding. It's like when you're learning a language, you have to let go and just let it flow. And it's scary at first when you're trying to put things together and you try to go to a place where they primarily all speak a language you don't, and you're brand new to the language, and you've only been speaking it for like maybe a couple of years in class and in school and in study, and then you have to go somewhere and try to have a conversation. That is a scary thing to let go of. That is a scary thing to feel like you're going to be judged in some way. And I think that people that are very still clinging to their religion in spirituality, they feel some type of way because they haven't let go yet. And I think it's interesting. I have kind of a personal beef with Catholicism, not to pick on them, but to me, it kind of seems like they would like to dominate. And to me, when there is any group that has a strong power and they're using it to dominate, there is a form of corruption there. Again, that is just my opinion. So I feel like this is interesting. I found something that I did not know, even though my background, where I was raised, was Baptist. My dad was not somebody who pushed us to be super religion and to study the Bible, even though he grew up in a very religious home where he had to go to church and Sunday school every single Sunday, or his dad would put hands on him. He came from the South, so things were very strict. He did not want us to be raised in that environment when it came to religion and our relationship with God. So we didn't have that upbringing, so I don't know every little thing there is to know about the Bible. So I just found out the story of Jesus when he was crucified, and when he died, he actually descended to Hades. It's not hell. Hades is like a waiting room where the righteous and the wicked wait to go up. And when Jesus descended down into Hades, he stole the keys of Hades and he proclaimed that that place is no more. And he took the righteous with him to heaven. He essentially freed them because they were basically like prisoners, and he freed them and he took them to heaven. And what I think is interesting is what I think is interesting is Catholics believe there is a purgatory that your soul goes to. But if Jesus did away with that, that's essentially Hades. Why are the powers that be still pushing that theory, that story? Because I feel that groups that intend to dominate and want to have a lot of say and control in situations used fear-based tactics. And Catholicism was one of the biggest ones. Oh gosh, you got to say 12 you got to say 12 Hail Marys. You got to do this. You got to do that, or you're guilty, 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 guilty. You know, they really push that whole fear and guilt and, oh, you're a bad person if you don't do this. You're a bad person if you don't do that. No, that's not the case. We're all human and we're all imperfect. And we should all embrace that. And Catholicism is one of the biggest ones that demonize you for being such. And I think it's funny that they've held on to the premise that there is a purgatory that people go to. I believe this is the purgatory and that we're in it. We're in it. And I love that. I love finding out about that, about Jesus, because I do believe that. I do believe that that was done away with. Makes a lot of sense to me in that way. And you can also tie it to the Egyptian beliefs as well, like Anubis and Maat and the weighing of the feather against the heart when you die before you go into your forever life. You know, that the Egyptians built all their tombs for was the afterlife. They were all about the afterlife. So before you could get into the afterlife, you had to be judged first. And I feel like that is where they were in the transitional place, like they were in Hades, so to speak, where Anubis and Maat were, weighing the heart against the feather on the scales. And so if Jesus did away with that, then they were freed, they were relieved of their positions. And I feel like that place was created after the battle in heaven happened. And the fallen angels came here and they decided to create that place, that transitional place that God didn't have any say in that. And that's why Jesus, I feel like, was able to abolish it, because it was something that God didn't create in that way. That's a download that I got. That's an understanding that became clear to me when I found out about that story. I always kind of knew about that. I always kind of knew there was no purgatory. And the whole weighing the scale, it was interesting. Like I always knew that did happen at some point. But I don't think that's an ongoing thing anymore, because you're not prejudged like that. It might be done in a, not necessarily, it's not going to be done literally. It's probably done symbolically when you get up there, when you're being judged, but it's not in the transitional place, because there's no purgatory. This is purgatory. I think we can all agree this is pretty much purgatory. But the other thing that really, again, I'm harping on Catholicism. I'm harping on the Vatican, because the Vatican has too much power. And when you have that much wealth, you're going to be corrupt. And that's not something that the Creator wants all of one group to have that much over everybody else. You're supposed to share everything. Everything's supposed to be shared. And people act like they're so terrified of the Vatican, and what does the Vatican know? And I've heard these rumors swirling around about the Vatican has these secrets that they have underneath the Vatican, and they might have some of the contents of the Alexander the Great's library. No, they might have some things of historical value because they've been around a while, but any real secrets they don't have. They don't have. I know this. The downloads that I got from my spirit team, and I have good intel. I have really good intel. And at that time when Alexander the Great's library burned, Egypt was pretty powerful, and they had a lot of secrets. And I was told, the download that I got from Isis herself was that that information that the Egyptians had that was stolen because they never wrote down any of their really most powerful writings or workings or whatever you want to call them. They didn't ever write them down. They spoke them. Everything was spoken inside the pyramids, inside their places of worship or temple. They didn't write anything down because it was so valuable. But you have to remember that there were slaves everywhere. There were servants everywhere. And the servants would hear those bits and pieces of it, and they sold a lot of it because secrets were valuable back then. They sold a lot of it, and it did get written down, and it did get, some of it did get put into the Alexander the Great library. But Alexander the Great's library, like any other place, has like vaults, secret, like the places where they store their most valuable, coveted prized possessions. All of that was in a vault that was really hard to access. So when the library burned, they had trouble accessing their most valuable secrets and saving them. So they all burned. They all burned to the ground. So whatever the Vatican has, they don't have those. And that's something that the Egyptians knew because they could see timelines ahead of time. They could see the future. And they knew nothing that they had spoken, that they ever wrote down, was ever going to make it into the hands in the future. They always knew that. And so when the slaves had breached that, where they had written it down and stolen it and sold it as secrets, they knew it wasn't going to make it. And that's probably the reason why the library got burned in the first place. It's about not having that much power, so you've got to get rid of it because corrupt people are going to get their grubby little hands on it. And that's basically the energy of Satan anyway. And these people that think that the Vatican has all this power and they're so scary, they're not. They want to appear like the Wizard of Oz. That's exactly who they are. And don't take them for anything more so than what they really are. They want to control the masses, but the people are waking up and they're going to have to shift shape a little bit to try to pivot to act like they are woke too. You're going to see that. And they're really not. They're just playing along so that they can maintain their grip on everything because they just want power. They just want to control everything. I don't see, I'd like to see something infiltrate them, but there is too much money there, unfortunately, and people will get seduced by that. And that's unfortunate.